Shabbat Shalom. I'm Cantor David Proser from Kempsville Conservative Synagogue, Kehillat Bet HaMidrash in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And this is our Torah portion for Saturday, Shabbat of April 24th, 2021, corresponding to the Hebrew month, the 12th of Iyar, 5781. We thank Rabbi Joseph Prauser, Rabbi Matthew Berkowitz, Rabbi Michael Gold, Rabbi Joyce Newmark, and the United Synagogue Torah Spark series for their various teachings and publications on this week's Parsha. This Shabbat, as we did last week, we again read a combined double portion from the Torah, Parshiyot Acharei-Kedoshim. Acharei begins on page 679 of your Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 480 of the Hertz. Parshat Acharei is familiar because it's the Torah reading for Yom Kippur. The Parsha begins by returning to the immediate aftermath after the death of Aharon's two sons, Nadav and Avihu. Aharon is disallowed from entering the Holy of Holies at will. God instructs Moshe to guide his brother and his remaining nephews in a detailed description of the Yom Kippur ritual conducted by the high priest. Only on this day is he permitted to enter the Holy of Holies. The sanctuary is purified, and the priest, in his elaborate vestments, atones for himself and his household and the community of Israel by means of 3 confessions and expiatory sacrifices. The central ritual of the day involves the random designation of 2 he-goats. One for the Lord is sacrificed as a sin offering. The sins of the Israelites are transmitted symbolically to the second goat, popularly known as the scapegoat for Azazel. That second goat is sent off into the wilderness where it is set free, carrying away the transgressions of the people. Contrary to the popular misconception, the scapegoat is not killed in this ritual. The meaning of Azazel is somewhat elusive. It is used contemporarily in Hebrew as the equivalent of hell. Its biblical usage may be the name of a desolate area to which the goat was sent. Rabbinic interpretations vary. Azazel is said to describe the harshness of the desert, or to refer to the goat itself. Az-Azel, or Ez-Azel, also approximates the Aramaic phrase, the goat that goes away. Azazel may also derive from a mythic wilderness demon. The English term scapegoat is medieval, dating only to the 16th century. The annual observance of Yom Kippur as a day of atonement and self-denial is prescribed as a permanent sacred rite. Chapter 17 deals with the prohibition against the consumption of blood and carrion, and the centralization of the sacrificial cult, and lists the dire sanctions for violations of these norms. Acharei concludes with a detailed list of forbidden sexual practices, among them various degrees of incestuous relationships and other illicit unions. This code of sexual mores distinguished Israel from the degenerate nations of Egypt and Canaan, and its neglect is deemed grounds for expulsion from the Promised Land. Parshiyot Kedoshim, beginning on page 693 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 497 of the Hertz, opens with the overriding commandment that gives the Torah portion its name. Kedoshim tihiyu, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. This is why we left Egypt, so that we could become a holy nation. And here we get the fine print of exactly how to do so. Kedoshim has been described as a brief Torah and a reworking of the Decalogue, because many of the Torah's basic teachings are to be found in these two chapters. The many mitzvot found here call for striving for holiness in all areas of life, civil and ethical. It provides the way to achieve the goals of national and individual holiness. Among the wide-ranging commandments in this parsha are reverence for parents, the prohibition against idolatry and false oaths, laws about the offering of well-being, the requirement to leave gleanings and designated areas of fields for the hungry and the poor, the prohibition of various forms of deception and fraud, including withholding a worker's wages, the prohibition of exploiting the vulnerable, including laws against cursing the deaf and placing stumbling blocks before the blind. Various aspects of justice are further explored, including the requirements to favor neither the rich nor the poor in court proceedings, and the obligation to reproach a wrongdoer. The Parsha includes a number of agricultural-based commandments, including the law of the Orlah, the prohibition against consuming fruit produced by a tree less than 4 years old. Tattooing is prohibited, as is cutting gashes in the flesh. This prohibition is understood by the rabbis to also extend to the creation of mutually exclusive and hostile sects or subdivision within the Jewish community, which would be tantamount to unsightly and unhealthy wounds to the Jewish sense of a united community. Further commandments include the prohibition against necromancy and the requirement to show deference to the elderly. The fundamental Jewish value of relating to the stranger with love is prescribed and linked to the Jewish national experience of being strangers in the land of Egypt. The obligation for honest business practices, especially honest weights and measures, is also provided. Parshiyot Acharei-Kedoshim also teaches perhaps the most famous lesson of the Torah, V'ahavta l'oreacha kamocha, that you will love your neighbor as yourself, a simple yet complex teaching. The Torah portion concludes with the prohibition against sacrificing one's children to Molech, an ancient pagan practice, as well as the prohibition against witchcraft and divination. The people Israel are to separate themselves from the pagan practices of the people of the land as they learn to separate the pure from the impure. This week's Haftorah is from the book of Amos, chapter 9, verses 7 to 15, found beginning on page 706 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and page 509 of the Hertz. The key word of Jewish existence to the prophet Amos is righteousness, which to him meant holiness in the life of the individual and the triumph of right in the world. The opening of our Torah portion strikes the note of consecration in our individual lives. This Haftorah is an oracle against those who have rejected that high Jewish ideal and thereby brought about the downfall of the kingdom. Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to subscribe, to like, to hit the notification bell so you'll always know when we post new content, and feel free to leave comments below. Shabbat Shalom.